Okay, tonight is Matthew chapter 15.
Then came to Jesus scribes and Pharisees which were of Jerusalem, saying, Why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. But he answered and said unto them, Why do ye also transgress the commandment of God by your tradition? For God commanded, saying, Honor thy father and mother, and he that curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But ye say, Whosoever shall say to his father or his mother, It is a gift, by whatsoever thou mightst be profited by me, and honor not his father or his mother, he shall be free. Thus have ye made the commandment of God of none effect by your tradition.
Okay, you have an interaction between Jesus and the scribes and the Pharisees. Okay, and so the scribes and the Pharisees were those who typically opposed him, and so now you see they're picking on his disciples. It says, "Why do your disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? They don't wash their hands when they eat bread." See, I think we would all agree that washing one's hands is a good thing. Okay, but so the way it's written, it sounds like the disciples were being unhealthy and so forth, and it won't sound like the scribes and Pharisees are just looking out for their well-being by encouraging them to wash their hands before they eat the bread. However, none of that is true. You see, you kind of understand what the context is here, right? That the eating of the bread that it's talking about was eating of bread like in a church meeting, okay? And then, like you see, it says the tradition of the elders. Okay, and the washing of the hands I was talking about was a ceremonial washing of the hands. Right? It wasn't really necessarily to like use soap and water to clean your hands. I mean, it was assumed that they came in with clean hands like that, but it was the idea that if they had touched anything that would be considered unclean or unpurified, even like say you shake hands with somebody who was a Gentile person, that would like defile you in their sight. Okay, so if you did any of those things, it was like a ritual hand washing that I guess they would. I mean, like let's say if we're going to pass the bread here in church, right? And let's suppose we had a ceremonial fountain here that we would just go and just do this before we give it out. I mean, even though we've already washed our hands, right? So I guess they were skipping this particular step, all right? Figuring that it wasn't really necessary. Their hands were clean. They just didn't believe in this defiling idea that if we touch somebody who is not considered one of the Jews, therefore we're defiled, and we have to use like magic water to wash away that defiling, right? So that's what they weren't doing, right? So I want to make sure that's clear, right? Because normally when you read this, you picture them with coming out of the field with dirty hands and they're eating bread and go, ew, So of course that they would get picked on for that. All right, but that's not what it's about, all right? It was just a ceremonial thing that they were choosing to skip because they didn't see any point to it. It was just a tradition anyway, all right? It was something that was done because it was traditional. It wasn't even their law or anything, right? And you can see all those words in there. It says, why do your disciples transgress the tradition of the elders, right? Like, we've always done it this way kind of thing. So how come they're not doing it the way we've always done it? Well, really the simple answer is because they don't think it's necessary, all right? But instead, Jesus turns it around on them. He says, he answered and said, why do you transgress the commandment of God with your own traditions? Right? And the example that he's using, as you can see in 4, 5, and 6, all right, well, 4, he says what the commandment is. Right? One of the 10 commandments given by Moses, right, was honor thy father and thy mother. Okay, that's one of the 10 commandments. Now, we read the 10 Commandments today, and we do what they say, right? And but if you were going to define what that meant today, honor your father and mother, it would typically just mean you give them respect. You don't treat them say disrespectfully. Okay, so you recognize them for who they are. Recognizing that everybody has different types of parents, and maybe some people's parents were less honorable than others, all right? But yet, we honor our father and mother for who they are. They brought us into the world. If they brought us up properly, these are all things that would be worthy of being honored for, right? That's how we define it today. back then the definition was a lot stricter, right? I mean, there was actual financial requirements, right? That if your parents were aged, you were responsible to take care of them, right? To make sure they were provided for, to spend money on them, right? So you couldn't just say, well, that's too bad. I don't care if they starve. You know, let them take care of themselves, right? That was not permitted, right? That was not honoring your father and mother to say I don't care about them and I don't care if they starve. So you were required to provide for them. You were required to use some portion of your money to support your parents. Okay, so that was the actual law. It says, but now in this case, the Pharisees had their own tradition that helped people get around the law. Okay, and what that tradition was is that they allowed people to declare their money to be, or some portion of the money to be, if you will, reserved for giving money at the temple. All right, to say, okay, yeah, there's this $100 that could be used to take care of my parents, but you know what? I'm going to mark that as that this is intended for the temple, so that therefore it's now clear of the rule that I have to spend it on my parents. So I have no money to spend on my parents because what I have left is all reserved for the temple. And they said, well, okay, well that's okay then. Then you don't have to worry about putting out money for your parents if you've reserved it for the temple. Even though reserving for the temple didn't necessarily mean you had to do anything with the temple, right? You just said it was reserved for the temple, but yet then at some other point you could say, well, you know what, I guess I need to use it for myself after all, and then you would just go ahead and use it. So it allowed them to get around the rule. And so when you read it that way, see, so in 5 it says, whosoever shall say to his father or mother, it's a gift, all right? In other words, this money is a gift to the temple. Right, and so 6, and honors not his father or mother, it's okay, he shall be free. In other words, he's not going to have any penalty. So he says, thus you've made the commandment of God of none effect by your tradition. Right, so the commandment of God, you've totally gotten around it by this little tradition of saying, well, you could mark this money as reserved for the temple, and then therefore you don't have to use it on taking care of your father and mother, which is really not honoring your father and your mother then.
Ye hypocrites, well did Esaias prophesy of you, saying, this people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoureth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. And he called the multitude and said unto them, hear and understand, not that which goeth into the mouth defileth a man, but that which cometh out of the mouth, this defileth a man.
In 7, he calls them the word that we just said. He was calling them, right? It says, ye hypocrites, right? That well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, as it says in verse 8, I guess 8 and 9, it says that this people draw nigh unto me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. You serve with your mouth, right? Or you talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk, as we say today, right? That they're talking a good game, but their actions don't illustrate that they really believe and are trying to do the right thing. They just talk it instead, right? And so in 9 it says, in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men, right? Because the commandments of men are not the commandments of God, right? So it's saying that teaching your own commandments or your own traditions as if they were doctrine of God. And they say that's not appropriate, right? You teach the things of God that are of God, and the things of men are of men, and understand what the differences are. Now, we have traditions today of things that we do, and that's okay as long as you understand that it's a tradition, right? That it can be changed if there was a reason to change it, and you're not going to beat somebody up for not following it if it's just a tradition, right? Which is different than a commandment of God. And then in 10 and 11, he's commenting on this whole bit of worrying about washing your hands in the way that they describe before eating the bread. So he says, hey, listen. He says it's not what goes into your mouth that defiles you. It's more what comes out of your mouth that's going to get you in trouble. All right. So don't so much worry about my hands were somehow defiled because they touched something, and so therefore now I'm touching the bread and putting my, that's meaningless. Worry about what you're saying, right? That's going to get you in trouble, that's going to offend people, to drive people away, and so forth. That's really more what you need to keep in check, is what comes out of your mouth.
Then came his disciples and said unto him, Knowest thou the Pharisees were offended after they heard this saying? But he answered and said, Every plant which my heavenly Father hath not planted shall be rooted up. Let them alone. They be blind, leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch.
So after this exchange, right, and especially probably the last part where Jesus says that they're hypocrites, and don't worry about what's in your mouth, worry about what comes out of your mouth, right? So now the disciples came and said, Hey, do you know that they were offended by what you said, right? They didn't like that, right? They were offended, so they're mad at you now for saying those things, right? So now did Jesus say, oh, well, we better go apologize to them? Did he say we have to print a retraction and take it all back? Or, so different than today, you see, right? So today someone says they're offended and they expect, announced apologies and so forth, and right? So Jesus said, hey, he says, first of all, they're not put where they are by God the Father, so they're not really, they're only in that position because they've given to themselves, all right? God hasn't placed them there. So that's what 13 is saying. Every plant which my Heavenly Father has not planted shall be rooted up, all right? So first of all, don't worry about that. But 14 is, of course, is my favorite, all right? 14, it says, don't worry, it says they think they're the leaders, but they're as blind as the people who they're trying to lead. And it says if the blind leads the blind, they're both going to fall in the ditch, right? Which is true, right? I mean, imagine a blind person saying to another blind person, "Hey, follow me," and I'll show you where to go, right? They're both going to get in trouble, all right? Because if first of all it's possible for the second blind person to follow the first one, maybe they're holding on or something, but yeah, the first one doesn't know where he's going either, right? So it's just a mess, all right? Well, he said that's what you have here with the Pharisees. They're the blind leading the blind, so they're both going to fall in the ditch. So anybody who follows them is in trouble.
Then answered Peter and said unto him, Declare unto us this parable. And Jesus said, Are ye also yet without understanding? Do not ye yet understand that whatsoever entereth in at the mouth goeth into the belly, and is cast out into the draught? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man. But to eat with unwashen hands defileth not a man.
So Peter says, explain what you mean by this parable. So the parable he's referring to is in verse 11. Okay, verse 11, it says, "Not that which goeth into the mouth defiles a man, but that which comes out of the mouth, that defiles a man." Right? He's referring to that as a parable. So Peter says, I don't understand. I don't understand what you meant by that. That's why Jesus said, you're not getting it, or you're not following this? He says, don't you understand that whatever goes in your mouth, whatever you eat goes in your belly and is, passes through and goes out the other side, right? And you can use other words to describe what he's describing, but but basically that's it, all right? I mean, what you eat today, I mean, some parts of it, of course, give you some nutrition or whatever, and the rest goes out, right? So it's here today and gone tomorrow, basically, okay? And it just passes right through, right? But he says that the things which come out of your mouth, he says that shows what's in your heart. See, so that has a lot more meaning and a lot more long-lasting effect, right? And he gives some examples, all right? He says that for out of the heart can proceed evil thoughts, murders, adultery, thoughts of all these things, right? It shows what's really on the inside. And so if you to express any of those kind of things, or to be offensive to people, or say things like that are in your heart, these are things that are going to have a long-lasting effect, because now people see what's on the inside, right? That's why he says that these are the things which defiles a man. To eat with unwashed hands, that doesn't defile a man. This is what defiles a person, is really what they say. So be more careful about what you say, more so than what you eat.
Then Jesus went thence, and departed into the coasts of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coasts, and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word, and his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent, but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
All right, so after this talking about what you eat and washing your hands and so forth, all right, it says, now after that, it says he departs into the coast of Tyre and Sidon, all right, and encounters a woman of Canaan. All right, now it's kind of key to the story to understand that somebody from Canaan would be not Jewish, okay, it would be a Gentile type person. Right, so that's kind of a key plot point for this particular part of the story. This is a Gentile woman, right? And then so she comes in and says, "Have mercy on me. My daughter is vexed with a devil." All right, she's possessed. So he wants she wants him to cast out the devil that's inhabiting her daughter, that's torturing her daughter, right? So it says at first he doesn't answer, and I guess she's probably crying out a little more. So the disciples come and say, to tell her to get lost, all right? I mean, she's bothering us. That's what it's saying in 23. Send her away, for she cried after us. She's making a lot of noise. She's being disruptive. So tell her to get lost, okay? But instead, he tries to answer her more to the point. He says, I'm not sent, but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel, all right? And now, this kind of a statement or teaching can be hard to understand today, right? Because today we're in the mode of the Gospels for everybody. And we've mentioned this other times, all right? But Jesus' real mission was to go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? That's who he came for. He came for Israel. Now, the Gentiles later were offered the gospel, and so that's why we're able to enjoy the gospel today, because the Gentiles are included. Now it's for everybody. At this time, it was not, quite frankly, right? That Jesus came for Israel, for the Jews. So, so even though we would say, well, I mean, this is Jesus, so of course he would want to help this woman, right? But yet that wasn't what God sent him to do, right? The Father didn't send him to go take care of every single person that had a need everywhere, right? And go cast out devils and heal this one. That wasn't his primary purpose. He was there to present the gospel to Israel. Okay, so that was what he was supposed to do. So, like I said, you can look at this one situation and say, well, I mean, how long would it take him to go like this? But that wasn't his mission, right? That wasn't really what he was sent to do. So that's why he says, I'm not sent, but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? That's really what I'm here for. So he's basically trying to explain to her, that according to my job description, I'm not supposed to be doing that for you, right? That's what he's trying to say here, right? Again, which was even more polite than his disciples wanted him to be. His disciples just wanted him to tell her to get lost, all right? Get lost, you're bothering me, all right? But instead he tried to explain to her, well, that this is not really what I was sent to do.
Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. And she said, Truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour.
After hearing Jesus' statement that, I really only have come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, so it says she came and worshipped him and saying, Lord, help me. Like, come on, you can do this, all right? You can do this. Help me out here, all right? And now the 26, like I said, I mean, it may sound cruel, all right? But you see what it says. It says the answer said it's not meet or it's not right to take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs, all right? Which, I mean, if you look at that from a point of, if you're sitting at the table, right, and and you have enough food for your children, you wouldn't take it from them and give it to the dogs, right? Well, in essence, he's saying she's one of the dogs, right? And so, so again, you can react to that as you would, right? But the Gentiles were referred to as dogs by the Jews, right? So I mean, that's kind of part of it also, right? That's what they were called. Right now, we have to believe, because it's Jesus that he was trying to do it in as inoffensive a way as possible, but yet this was the bottom line, is that if you, and if you think about it for your own, like I said, for your own family situation, I mean, so suppose you had really only enough food to feed your children, all right, and the dog is there next to the table, would you take the food away from your children and give it to the dog? You wouldn't. You wouldn't, okay? So it's really just more a point of a priority, all right? It's not saying not really saying you're a dog, all right, but saying that you're a lower priority than the children of Israel, because that's who I came for. So I really can't even, I'm not supposed to take my time and focus away from them and give it to you, any more than you would take food away from your children and give it to your dog, all right? And so that's really what he's trying to get across. Again, the whole idea of prioritizing. But it also so happens that the Gentiles were referred to as the dogs by the Israelites. So that's why it kind of fit in that particular statement also. However, in 27, she hears that, and now again, somebody else might be totally offended by what was just said and say, well, then I'm leaving, all right? But instead it says that's true what you said, but even the dogs get to eat of the crumbs that fall off the table, all right? So if you were feeding your family and some crumbs fell off the table, the dogs would be able to eat that. In other words, give me a crumb here, all right? I'm willing to even take the crumbs that fall off the table, all right? Now, saying all that, that's why Jesus says in the next verse, "O woman, great is thy faith," right? Because what she's doing is she's recognizing that this is the source of healing, right? That he is the Son of God. And so rather than be offended at anything he said, I understand what you're saying is true, but I'm willing to even take the crumbs because, so kind of like if you wanted to picture the woman who was crawling on the ground to touch the hem of his garment, I would put this in the equivalent category, right? So I'm willing to take the crumbs, So understanding or hearing that, he's like, wow, this woman has great faith, right? And so that's why he says, "O woman, great is thy faith, be it unto thee even as thou wilt." In other words, he's going to give her what she asked for because she demonstrated such faith. It says her daughter was made whole from that very hour, all right? So that whatever the devil was that was vexing the daughter was cast out right in the very same hour. Okay, so he granted her request because she was so humble about it and persistent and recognizing him for who he was, demonstrating great faith, all right? And so he said, hey, how can I really withhold this? But to seeing the kind of faith you have.
And Jesus departed from thence, and came nigh unto the Sea of Galilee, and went up into a mountain, and sat down there. And great multitudes came unto him, having with them those that were lame, blind, dumb, maimed, and many others, and cast them down at Jesus' feet, and he healed them. Insomuch that the multitude wondered when they saw the dumb to speak, the maimed to be whole, the lame to walk, and the blind to see, and they glorified the God of Israel.
Now, having read the story or heard the story of the Jesus with the Gentile woman here, right? It says now from there, he says he went over closer to the Sea of Galilee, right, which we happen to have pictured here, right? And so really, like he was kind of hanging out over here, right? And so now he's going to go a little closer to the sea, about where that dot is. In fact, that's what the dot's there for, right? That's where the next scene takes place. And he said, so he says he went up to a mountain and sat down there. It says great multitudes came with all their sick now, and lame, blind, dumb, maimed, and so forth. These were all Gentile people now, right? Because he's in the land of the Gentiles, right? And now the word must have spread of what happened with this woman. So now these are all Gentile people flocking around him. Right, and see, this is what happens when you make an exception. He says, he says a whole bunch of Gentile people came, great multitudes came and cast them down at Jesus' feet, and he healed them. Okay, so he's doing a big healing among the Gentile people, and that's why now 31 says that insomuch that the multitude wondered, like, what is this? All right, I mean, because all the Jewish people had seen this. I'll say this act before, or they've seen this happening before. What is this? All right, that he can do. They saw the dumb to speak, the maimed to behold, the lame to walk, the blind to see. They glorified the God of Israel. All right, see, and that's why it's worded that way. All right, because the Gentiles were not believers in the God of Israel, but now they said, well, if this guy comes from the God of Israel, he does good things here, all right? He does good things in all of our sick and so forth, our blind, our maimed and so forth are all being healed. And then he's doing it, well, now we can recognize the God of Israel, because God of Israel is the one who sent him. Okay, so that's, again, kind of a key point to understand. He's doing this among the Gentile people in this particular set of verses.
Then Jesus called his disciples unto him and said, I have compassion on the multitude, because they continue with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat, and I will not send them away fasting, lest they faint in the way. And his disciples say unto him, Whence should we have so much bread in the wilderness, as to fill so great a multitude? And Jesus saith unto them, How many loaves have ye? And they said, 7, and a few little fishes. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and the fishes, and gave thanks, and brake them, and gave to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled, and they took up of the broken meat that was left 7 baskets full. And they that did eat were 4,000 men, beside women and children. And he sent away the multitude, and took ship, and came into the coasts of Magdala.
Of course, yeah, the story does sound familiar, right? But you can see some different details here, right, from the story that we just read in the previous chapter. Okay, the most obvious being that the previous chapter one, it says he fed 5,000 people. This one, it says 4,000 people. Right, so it is a different group. Right now, other ways that are not as obvious. Right, remember I said he's over here by this dot. Okay, in the previous chapter he was up here by this dot. Okay, over right next to Galilee and Galilee, Nazareth, and so forth. All right, that this was among the Jews. This is among the Gentiles. Right, it's a totally different audience that he's doing this for. Okay. Also, if you remember the one that we read in the previous chapter, right? It happened. The same day that he found out about John the Baptist's death, and then afterward so they were there kind of for the whole evening, and then he fed them and sent them on their way, and then he walked across the water, right? In this particular instance, how long have the people been there? 3 days, okay? So it's a totally different thing here. He was with them for 3 days, and so at the end of 3 days, he says, I have compassion. They're doing me out 3 days, and I have nothing to eat. Right, so we don't want to send them away fasting, or they're going to pass out. Right, I mean, now I don't know if they've literally had nothing to eat for 3 days, but clearly it's been 3 days, and he says they're going to pass out on the way home if we don't give them something to eat. So he turns to the disciples and says, "Hey, we can't send them home without eating. We need to feed them." So now, if it was maybe you or me among the disciples, we might say, "Okay, I know what you're going to do now." Right? But they don't. It says, well, wait a minute. How are you going to feed them? There's no stores out here in the wilderness. All right? How are we going to buy bread? Right? That's what he says. When should we have so much bread in the wilderness to fill so great a multitude? What do you think? We brought enough to feed 4,000 people here? We didn't bring that much with us. And we're out in the wilderness. How are we going to feed them? All right? And so Jesus said, well, okay, how many loaves you got? Okay, we got 7 and a few fish. That'll do it, all right? That'll do it. And so it is, of course, in the next few verses, you can see that he does get something similar to the other episode where everybody sit down, let's be organized, right? And now he takes the 7 loaves and the fish and gives thanks to God and breaks them and gives them out to the disciples, and they in turn feed it to the multitude, right? And it says, and they all eat, they were filled, and now they had leftovers again, right? And if you remember the other chapter said they had 12 baskets of bread left, right? So now it says here they picked up all the broken meat that was left, and there's 7 baskets full, right? So again, a different number than they had the other time, right? Here's the 7 baskets left over, right? And of course, as we said, that the 4,000 were fed as opposed to 5,000 the other time, okay? And so after this particular episode, which concludes 3 days with these Gentile people, it says now everybody can go home. You're filled. You're fed. You're sick have been healed. You've heard what I've had to say. Because obviously he was also presenting the gospel to them. That's why he said they worshiped the God of Israel. So they had heard the gospel preached. They had witnessed these miracles. They were fed, and now they're able to be sent home. And he's able to go on to the next place that he's going to go for the next chapter.